Well, welcome to another Friday night. We've started a little series all about fawning. And what we've seen is that fawning was the ultimate survival skill when fight, flight, and freeze weren't good enough. Fawning allowed a child to survive within a dangerous situation, but still have a certain amount of safety and get their needs met. And we've been doing a deep dive into understanding that. But what I want to look at today is that though fawning really originates within the survival world, it has become something sadly within our world today that has been very much validated, very much promoted, very much approved of by all kinds of different cultures, organizations, etc. And so, what I really want to look at today is that survival doesn't just encourage fawning. All kinds of other things within our world encourage fawning. And that's what makes it so hard for people who are fawners to quit fawning, is because it's encouraged by so many different things within our culture. So think of it this way: fight, flight, and freeze are often seen within our cultures as being negative. You're doing stuff to escape, you're doing stuff to stay safe, but it's doing stuff that's going to hurt you. Fawning, though it's the exact same purpose, is seen as a positive thing. It is seen as something that, wow, this is good. We like that. Keep on doing that. We want to encourage it. And that just makes it so hard for people to begin to see that it is actually a very negative thing that does a lot of damage. So I want to give you different things within our world today that encourage fawning to help you really begin to see that, wow, we are living in a world that is encouraging this one survival skill, even though it does a ton of damage. So the first is shame cultures. And we've done a whole video on shame cultures. And what shame cultures basically are is that the people who get into the positions of authority in the culture are people with deep shame. And so their solution to shame is, if I'm the boss and I get everything the way I want it, then I'll be happy. If I get people to respect me, look up to me, give me what I want, always get my own way, then I'll be happy. That is basically what a shame culture is. And so that person in authority abuses their authority, and then they create all kinds of rules that suit them, that require everybody else to give in to them. There's a double standard. They don't have to follow those same rules, but they require all these rules. And the recipe for peace, the recipe for being a healthy society, what people are told is you need to honor your elders. You need to respect your elders. You need to conform to what the leadership wants. That's a healthy society. That's the only way to be truly happy and healthy. And that becomes a shame culture. So it's driven by a person in leadership with shame, who then creates fear and indoctrination all around. You have to submit to me. You have to conform to what I want is the way to be healthy. And so it's dressed up in religious terms often. It's dressed up as honoring your parents, respecting your parents, but it's all about giving the person in authority what they want. So if you go to a shame culture, you'll find people who bow every time they're around an elder or a person in authority. They may not feel respect in their heart for that person. They may hate that person, but they will show respect externally, outwardly, because that's required of them. And they're required to put the needs of the leader ahead of their own, to do what the leader wants, even though it's bad for the whole family, and that's called obedience. Everything is about doing what the leader wants. And so you condone stuff and you go along with stuff, even though it hurts you, it hurts others, because you have to honor that person in authority. So fawning is seen then as a very healthy quality in those cultures. You are attuning yourself to the leadership. You are putting their needs ahead of your own. You are conforming to what they want. You are taking care of their needs. You are sacrificing yourself. And that is seen as what makes a healthy family and a healthy society. But what I want you to see is that if that's a narcissist, that's the person in power, now you are fawning to a narcissist, and you're being told that that's going to make a healthy society. But no, it doesn't. It supposedly is supposed to lead to unity, to happiness, to peace. But what it's actually doing is creating complex trauma, and it's wounding thousands of people over generations. But narcissistic people who get in positions of authority and create shame-based societies love fawners. They encourage fawning. They want everybody to fawn because that lets them rule and not be held accountable. That lets them live by the standards they want and have everybody agree to them. The second system that encourages fawning is patriarchy. So patriarchy, again, we've talked about this in the past. Patriarchy is a system where men are superior to women in position, in making decisions, in who gets to lead the house, who makes the rules in the house, who gets what they want in the house. So the needs of the men matter more than the women. Women are expected to adopt certain roles decided by the men as to what is appropriate in their mind, as to what they can do, what they should be like, etc. And so that's why fawning often is seen as being quite feminine, because you defer to the other person, you acquiesce to the other person, you submit, you caretake, and you care for everybody else and sacrifice and sacrifice. You speak softly. You never engage in conflict. You just give in and you forgive and you are so sweet and you please everybody. That's fawning. But that's the role of a woman in a patriarchal society. So I want to be clear. Fawning is not gender-based. But in patriarchal societies, women are told to be fawners in order to be acceptable. So a role was cast for women, which basically is let men rule. Let men be narcissists. Let it make it all about men, that men's needs matter more than anybody else. Therefore, you, if this society is going to work, you women must fawn. That's the only way this society is going to work. So we are going to make that sound spiritual, godly. We're going to make that sound like you're the gentle sex, the sweet sex. We're going to do all kinds of things to make it sound really good, but we're going to keep you in a place of fawning. That is sadly what has happened in so many cultures. And over the years, as I've worked with thousands and thousands of women, it's sad to have to say that most women talk about the need to fawn at some point in their life in our culture today. It shows that there's still a patriarchal element and mindset within our culture, even misogyny. And so women still have to resort to fawning to survive, or they're expected to fawn in order to be a good woman. If they stand up for themselves, if they present themselves as an equal to a man, all of those things, they immediately get looked down on, they immediately get judged, they immediately get told that they're not acting appropriate to their position, to being a woman, etc. It's such a sad thing. So, shame-based cultures, patriarchy, all love fawning. It's built into the system. The system only survives because of fawning and encourages fawning. So bring that down to complex trauma families, unhealthy family systems. And what makes an unhealthy family system? That the person in the position of authority, mom or dad, is abusing that position of authority, has narcissistic tendencies, where their needs, their wishes, they want to act the way they want to act and have everybody else cover for them, caretake them, accommodate for them, and not be held accountable. And so now, in order for that family to function without there constantly being war, abuse, everybody's got to learn to fawn. So if it's dad that's the narcissistic person, mom has to become always give in, keep the peace, do what dad wants, take care of dad's needs. Then she gets the kids. Don't rebel against dad. Don't speak back to dad. Don't go against dad's wishes. And everybody gets trained to fawn. And then the children are told this is all about learning to respect your parents, learning to obey your parents. This is all about family loyalty. And you have to be loyal to your family because all you have is family. They're always there for you. It is seen as the only way to have a healthy family, a happy family. And it makes sense in the short term that if everybody just conforms to the narcissistic authority, yes, it'll be happy temporarily. But it does not work. It wounds children. It creates complex trauma. So one of the things that happens in shame-based cultures, patriarchy, in family systems that encourage fawning is the children, the people are told, you need to prove your love to the leadership. You need to prove your loyalty to the leadership by fawning even more, by submitting even more. That's how you prove your love. So you got to prove your love by making yourself smaller and smaller. Go to the extreme of self-abandonment. That proves you love the other person totally. That sounds so noble, like, wow, this is proving my love, but that is so unhealthy, so damaging for people. So I hope what you saw in this is that in a family system, often you get a parent that then encourages their children to fawn. So the mom who has to fawn to keep dad happy, to keep dad from beating her up, to keep less arguments from happening, then gets the children to fawn. And they're given all the indoctrination as to why this is supposed to be a righteous thing to do. And so the children are encouraged to fawn. That is part of what is happening in that system. There's a fourth system that encourages fawning, and that's if you look at the service organizations in our culture today that serve people. So what are you told? The customer is always right. And so it doesn't matter how the customer treats you, you got to be nice to them. It doesn't matter how they're acting and how dysregulated and how cruel and abusive they're acting. You swallow your normal response, you kowtow to them, you act sweet, you apologize, you give them what they want. And so a whole element of organizations, service industry organizations, teach people to fawn. And often within sales as well. That is part of how you gain sales is by fawning. And then the fifth is many spiritual organizations encourage fawning. They're told that you're supposed to submit to your leaders because that's submitting to God, and that's what everybody's supposed to do. You're supposed to submit to other people and care for other people, sacrifice for other people. And that's called maintaining unity. That's called loving people. That is built in to many spiritual organizations. So love and unity, these are triumphed as values, as the key aspects of what makes the organization healthy and great. But the path to love and unity is you got to fawn. You got to fawn to the leaders. You got to give, give, give. Don't take care of yourself. And we call that love. So you do all of that, but you suffer, your children suffer, your family suffers, but you get validated by the spiritual organization as you are a loving, wonderful, caring, giving, godly person. And so it encourages fawning. There's a sixth thing that I think is important to talk about that encourages or requires fawning. And that's people living in a country where they're still experiencing racism. And so, what we know in looking back at times of slavery is that slaves often only could survive if they learn fawn. And so it was always yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, master, and do whatever they want, act happy all the time. And it was a fawning required culture in order to survive. And so what happens now when people experience racism is they have to go back to fawning. So if they were to act equal to the other people in that culture, they would get told to act in keeping with their station. They would get told that they're acting inappropriately. And so they have to learn to fawn. And so there's still an element for many people outside of the family where fawning is a survival necessity, and that's within racism. There's one other thing that I see in a lot of cultures today, and that is cultures that really are about kind of a toxic positivity. So let's everybody just be happy all the time, positive all the time. So let's be sweet to each other, polite to each other. Let's just overlook problems. Let's not talk about negative stuff. Let's not talk about problems. Because if we're just positive all the time, then we're going to have a happy society. And so what happens with that basically is you suppress your emotions, you suppress your needs, you don't talk about things that might make people uncomfortable, you try to put a positive spin on everything and kind of gaslight yourself because you want to be positive, you want to create unity, you want to create happiness, but really you're just fawning. But cultures can encourage that. Then the final thing that we need to talk about is, so children who are raised in families where there's a narcissistic parent, and if they try to stand up for themselves initially, they get told they're too sensitive, they're too angry, they're selfish, they get told all kinds of things negative about themselves that aren't true, but the child believes they're true. And so they're being gaslit. They're being told that don't trust your gut, don't trust your perceptions, don't stand up for yourself. You aren't worth standing up for because you're wrong, you're bad. And so you need to submit to me. That's the only way you can be a good kid. So they are gaslit repeatedly within those systems. Sadly, what happens once they get to adult life is they continue to gaslight themselves. So now they get in a relationship and they feel the need to stand up for themselves, and they immediately go, oh, you're being selfish, you're being narcissistic, and they gaslight themselves and they return to fawning. And so what has happened is the external systems that encourage fawning now have moved to become an internal system where it maintains the fawning posture and mentality through self-gaslighting. And so part of unfawning, healing from fawning, is not just recognizing the external systems, it's recognizing the self-gaslighting. But as soon as you go to change and stop not standing up for yourself, stop not expressing your needs, and you now express your needs, you now stand up for yourself, you're going to go through a very uncomfortable time where you experience cognitive dissonance that says you're being bad, you're being selfish, you're being lazy, you're being unloving. All of those things are now going to run through your mind because you are moving out of an unhealthy normal, but it was your normal, to a healthier place, but it feels wrong. And everything in you is going to try to gaslight you to go back to the old normal. So just be aware that there's this breaking of all of that internal gaslighting as part of the healing journey. So I hope that just gives you a bigger perspective on the fact that gaslighting isn't just this ultimate survival skill. It has become characteristic that is encouraged in many, many, many places within our culture and validated and made to sound righteous. And that's what makes it extra difficult to begin to see it for what it is and to break from it and change.